Včasih res mislimo, da naša država ukraj meče gnar, ne. In včasih ga mogoče res, ne. Ampak tukaj bomo videli ene zadeve, ko so milijarde ukraj vrgli, pa niso nikoli uporabljali, tako da se mu boljš glede naše države počutila. Slovenija se mi zdi, da je še super glede špar, zgnajeno, glede na to, kar bomo videli, ko bo je tule pokazali. Nekaj tajega se mi zdi, da ne bo obstal, to je AI generated, ne. Torej, 5 največjih megaprojektov, ko niso bili nikoli uporabljeni. Torej imamo H3 v Havajih, 26 kilometrov, v Havajih, v glavnem zelo lep razgled okoli, to je, okej. Probleme imajo s tem, da se ustavljajo, zato da gledajo razgled okoli, okej. Pearl Harbor pa... Sam to je več kot 26 kilometrov. Veš, da problem je že prednji so začeli graditi, mogoče je že to znak, da ne bi smeli tega delati. V 26 letih? A v 26 letih je niso niti naredili še, what? V 26 letih se je končno začela. 37 let, wow. Ja, okej, fair, ja. Ampak svaka čast tistim, ko so naredili samo vse. Zakaj je to bolj... Veš, da viadukti pa tole. 250 milijonov. 1,3 milijarde! Za 6... Glih smisel reči, za 26 kilometrov, 15 milijonov na kilometr ceste. Critics believe that it's a road to nowhere because the defense considerations of the 60s are no longer relevant and the highway has no direct route to downtown Honolulu. Then there's the case of native Hawaiians, a majority of whom refuse to use the street to this day. They consider it to be cursed as many religiously significant cultural sites were destroyed during its completion. Interstate H3 highway is certainly an achievement as far as mega projects go. However, for certain native groups, it remains useless. At least it isn't completely abandoned, like the next project on our list. Ne zgleda glih tak, da bi bila totalno neuporabna, to je res. Ciudad Real Central Airport, Spain. Ne zgleda čisto, kot da je čisto zapuščeno. Travel destinations in Europe, and that was a key consideration when the idea for the Ciudad Real Central Airport was conceived. It was tipped to be the go-to destination for holiday travelers within Spain, as well as international visitors. A je to dejansko pol gor, ali to je vizija? To the already heavily overcrowded main airport in Madrid. Aha, okej, torej posledica, ta bi ne bil posledica onga, ker je prav nagužvan bilo na ta glavnih. However, expansion plans were already in motion to boost the capacity up to 10 million annually. Torej, da je zastop, ni bila niti nared? Ni bilo niti nared, pa so že študirali, koliko je bojo razširili. The problems began with the location of the project. While it was called the Central Airport, it wasn't central in any way, as it was located 200 kilometers away from Madrid. This compounded problems as most of the passengers avoided traveling for hours to get to the remote location, and most big airlines preferred to carry out flight operations from the capital. Torej je bilo neuporabno, ker ni bilo tujih. With no major airlines to attract passengers, the airport had accumulated a $350 million debt by 2012. 350 milijonski kredit. And was put up for auction in 2013. The airport was even popularized as an abandoned location by the hit British TV show Top Gear in 2014.
Top Gear je tam snemu, zato ker je bilo tujk neuporaben.
$12,000 offer, the airport was finally sold to new owners in 2019.
A Spanish
10
airport
euro.
that cost €1 billion to build has attracted a bid of just €10,000. Ciudad Real's La Mancha airport opened in 2000.
Naredili so za 1,1 oziroma 1,3 milijarde evrov. Prodali pa za 10 evrov.
The Ciudad Real airport got a lifeline. With little hope of passengers returning, the new owners reinvented the airport as a home for grounded planes, given its dry climate, long runway, and spaciousness.
Okay, to je dejansko uporabno. Najdli so pol
there were
način.
65 airplanes parked on the airport, with expansions underway to provide a storage facility for over 300 aircraft.
I mean, honestly, ja, če že ni uporabna za to, da bi ljudje sem prehajali, je uporabna vsaj za to, da je poshramba,
ne? Of normal flight operations remains elusive. This billion-dollar mega project remains effectively useless for passengers around the world.
Verjamem, da je neuporabno. Dvakrat ni za reči. Ajde, gremo na številko 3.
Myanmar.
Myanmar, Naypyidaw, bla bla bla. Kora, kaka cesta.
Unfortunately, this isn't just a remote
Ko je bilo
airport.
to
It's
4-5
the capital of
pasovnice.
Myanmar, a new capital that was built from scratch. Myanmar's former military leadership started building a new capital.
Kar naenkrat je zrasla v 13 letih.
The shifting of a country's
So naredili
capital
cel
isn't
mest.
unheard of, as many countries, including Brazil, Egypt, and Pakistan, have done so in the past. In November 2005, Myanmar's leader announced his decision to the public, but he kept the name of a new capital a secret. It was 4 months later when he finally revealed the name, Naypyidaw, which literally means the king's residence. The reason for this sudden shift of capital wasn't clear. Some speculated that the military leadership was fearful of an attack from the sea, while others thought it was shifted on the advice of astrologers. However, a lot of it had to do with the former capital, Yangon. Yangon is home to 7 million people, and the city is said to have reached its infrastructural limits, and its population is set to double by 2050.
Ok, to je fair, ja. Če ni več pleca, da bi se širil, pa tak narastek napovedan po boljše.
So it made sense for Myanmar to shift the capital to a more central location.
Ne, to je dal stran.
The new project was built swiftly.
To je izgleda tako 250
kilometrov. Poured $4 billion into the city. Naypyidaw seemingly has everything to attract visitors. A 20-lane highway, over 100 luxury hotels divided into 3 hotel districts, golf courses, museums, and even a 99-meter-tall replica of a landmark originally situated in Yangon. But there's one essential component that remains missing.
Da vidimo, ko fali. Noben ga ni. Noben se ni vselil sem not. Oh, fuck.
The new capital is home to less than 1 million residents, most of which reside in the suburbs that were present even before the city became the capital. But why does no one want to live there?
Se ni nobeden vselil. 4 bilijone, 4 milijarde šlo v nič.
Educational institutes and economic opportunities mean that most of the population is reluctant to make the city a permanent home. So the city often paints the picture of a deserted place and is often referred to as a ghost town. The incredible 20-lane highway is practically empty. Traffic congestion is unheard of, and at times, a single automobile is caught drifting along the tremendous road.
Ja, no, to bi pa jaz šel
The city has
driftat.
an airport that can handle 3.5 million passengers every year, but on a busy day, a dozen people will actually use it. The shopping malls are visited only by the diplomatic staff on weekends, while the hotel lobbies are mostly empty.
Torej vse je prazno, celo mesto, 4 milijarde je šlo noter, pa vse prazno.
It's built as a city of the future, and with the exploding population,
I mean, lahko da se bojo vseliti. Ja, glih to, kar je rekel, ne. Po moje je velika šansa, da se bojo še vseliti, ja.
For much of the country's population. Number 2, Forest City, Malaysia.
Torej, gozdno mesto.
And next on our list is a green futuristic smart city that would rise from reclaimed land on 4 artificial islands.
Kako je to gozdno, a ni to... To dejansko... Ne, to ne obstaja, to so zgradili. A Forest City je zato, ker ima toliko zelenega. Okej.
Singapore has the world's second busiest port and a thriving economy. The developers have already linked Forest City with Singapore through the second link bridge, shortening the distance between the cities to just 20 minutes. Forest City will also have its own customs facility, enabling residents to move freely to Singapore.
Kva so to za ene luči, To dejansko zgleda tako nekaj tega, ko smo 5 let nazaj gledali v filmu. Sam to ne zgleda. Tak zgleda ful zarašen. Ok, tak zgleda v redu. Mal zarašen zgleda vse skupaj.
The city will be powered exclusively with renewable energy and will be completed by 2035 at a cost of $100 billion. One of the 4 proposed islands is close to
cela naša država ni uredna tujk.
Golf courses, swimming pools, and beaches on board. However, it's not all smooth sailing for this highly ambitious project. A multitude of economic and political hurdles are already hindering its progress. The project is being funded mainly through China, and Chinese residents virtually had a free pass to the city in the first few years of its construction. As a consequence, wealthy Chinese investors who couldn't afford the soaring prices of apartments in their own country rushed to Forest City. By 2019, 80% of the property owners were Chinese. Even the street signs were in Mandarin, and the few schools that opened in the area were offering Mandarin courses. The native Malaysians simply can't afford to buy these apartments as property prices are set with only the Chinese markets in mind. This influx of Chinese investors caused a public outcry, with opponents of the project calling it a new form of colonialism. So, after a change of leadership, returning Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad banned foreigners from owning property in the Forest City. Many foreigners started leaving the city, and new investors were discouraged. The next major setback came in the form of the pandemic and the worldwide travel bans. Malaysia's movement control order meant that no new investors could move in. Lots of existing investors opted out of the project due to the uncertainty. So, by the start of 2020, less than 500 people were actually living in the residential developments, which is not a lot, considering that Forest City is designed for 700,000 people. The project has remained in flux ever since, with some salespeople claiming that fewer than 10 homes were sold at Forest City since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Moreover, Country Garden laid off more than 1,000 of its Malaysian workers in the past year, signaling the epic downturn in the project's fortunes. Forest City was probably too ambitious to begin with, too futuristic to
100 milijard.
And too politically challenged to succeed anytime soon.
Če bi začeli z malim, bi šlo skozi, po moje, ne vem, začeli s 3 stavbami, 4, pa ne vem, en hotel, tak, pa bi vsem bila mala atrakcija, bi že avtomatsko potegnala.
Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository.
Mal gnarja se vojne.
We'll conclude this list with a mega project that was planned in view of a sensitive global issue. Nuclear waste isn't talked about as much as other environmental problems. However, if not stored properly, it can be deadlier than anything ever witnessed since the advent of civilization. As of now, nuclear waste is stored above ground, near the power plants where it comes from. However, the scientific community agrees that the safest permanent disposal solution is to store this hazardous waste deep underground.
Sam, če je pod zemljo, a ne bo vsejen šlo pač v podtalnico noter. V vodo bo vsejen šlo, pa bo vsejen do onesnaženja prišlo, ne bo. Jaz imam tak občutek.
USA's most used nuclear testing site and was away from any population centers.
I mean, okay, to je pa v redu, da je
deposit the waste from all over the country in a tunnel complex about 300 meters under Yucca Mountain.
300 metrov
in addition to the isolated location, Yucca Mountain is made up of volcanic ash formed millions of years ago. It allows the Yucca Mountain to absorb any radioactive waste without crumbling or cracking.
To je dejansko dobro, to so pol dobro naštudirali, ne? Sam zakaj je zdaj to
The United States has over 100 operational and closed nuclear reactor sites in 34 states, but none of them were in Nevada. So, the congressional representatives and the general public vigorously opposed the idea of being the only nuclear dumping site in the whole country.
To je res, ja, okej.
Question marks were raised over the official
Po moje tudi
hydrological
v
and
Sloveniji, ne vem, če
geological
bi rekli, na
surveys
en
of the
mest
Yucca
bomo zdaj
Mountain.
furali
Opponents believed that the site was
odpadke
unsuitable for a
nuklearne, bla, bla,
repository,
bla.
as it runs the risk of
Tudi ne bi
contaminating a
noben
nearby water source.
hotel.
The water source
Da bi tja
flows into
peljali.
Amargosa Valley.
Točno to, kar
and is
ste
used
rekel,
by
voda.
Native Americans who have
Lej.
lived in the area for centuries.
Voda!
Despite the opposition, the project won approval in 2002, and the Department of Energy resumed construction. However, Nevada's opposition
22 so
only
začeli.
grew stronger. They contended that routine exposures during the transition will stigmatize Nevada's residents and affect tourism in the state. For the opposition, the only reason Nevada was getting the repository was because of its lower population and smaller representation in Congress.
Ja, okay,
By the
fair.
time Barack Obama took office, the whole project had become highly politicized, and in 2010, the Obama administration deemed the project
Obama je
unworkable and stopped
nehal.
funding it. 3 years later, a federal
Dejansko,
court
a so pol
ordered its
naprej
resumption
šli.
again,
Pa
but there
so
has been
naprej
little
šli, wow,
progress
okay.
since.
A,
The
niso
Biden
naredili,
administration has clearly stated that Yucca Mountain isn't a part of the country's plans anymore.
Da,
Nevada
okej. Torej,
seems to have won the battle after 4
da nekaj,
decades.
da nekaj
Decades of
zdaj
fighting,
rečem, ne.
legal troubles, and over $17 billion
Vse lepo in
have
prav,
gone into the Yucca
17
Mountain project.
bilijonov, okej. Vse lepo in prav, ne, ampak če pogledamo, ne vem, ono mesto še ima vedno šanso, da se bo enkrat pol pač, da bojo noter ljudje prišli. Ne, isto ima ono Forest City, oba dva mesta še imata šanse, da bo tak denar nazaj začela vlečiti, ne. To nima. To ne bo pol nikoli uporabno, pa 17 milijard že noter šlo. Če ste uživali, upam, da niste pozabili na like, upam, da si niste pozabili naročiti spodaj. Pa ja, mislim, da znam jaz kar dobro zgnarju šparat, ne meče milijard ukrej. Adijo!